Greetings and welcome to all of you. I hope you're enjoying our series, our little mini series, A Day in the Life of Pine View. This little vignette today will be focusing on patience and here to explain what it was like amid and during a major pandemic. Here's KT, our manager.
So the first ones that I'm going to start talking about are our great horned owls, which we actually admitted 14 total, 7 of which were immatures. It does take approximately 12 mice a day to feed one single immature owl, and that's at the very beginning in their nestling state. And it does take about 65 cents per mouse. So if you take that out, the cost per day is $8 a day for one owl, times that by the 7 that we admitted, and that's how much it costs in one day just for the immature great horned owls. It does not account for the adults that we were also taking care of at the time. A lot of these great horned owls were ones that had fallen out of the nest, and we do always try to place them back into the nest. If you were at the gala last year, I talked a lot about that and our process of re-putting them into the crotch of a tree, or we will actually manually place a box into the tree, screwed onto the side where we will put them and see if the parents come back, and we'll accept that as their nest site. Unfortunately, we weren't able to re-nest any this year, so we actually had to keep all of them, and some of them were quite young. They wanted nothing to do with us at the end, that we were able to release them all earlier in September and early October. The next species I'm going to be talking about is our painted turtles. They're very common. I also will touch on a little bit on our snapping turtles. This year we were able to admit not as many as usual because of the temperatures were a little bit different this year. We did admit though 145-ish eggs, maybe a little bit more. So the number one thing that we see with our painted turtles and snapping turtles is that they are out almost all summer. They will lay their eggs early summer into late summer. So they're out on the roads. They will travel miles to find an appropriate nesting site. It's not always next to water. So if you ever run across painted turtles or snapping turtles that are the size of, a quarter or a $50, they're fine. You can leave them where they are unless you see them that they're being consistently run over or on some sort of asphalt where they're going to be dehydrated. Then definitely give us a call. But if you run across something that's in the wild like this, it's in the grass, it's in the greens, it is on its way to water. They have very good homing instincts from hatchling on. And many people may not know this, but parent turtles, their job is to find an appropriate nest site, and that's it. So they will breed, find their nesting site, dig their holes. They will go in your gravel piles, or if you have mulch sitting around, they will find any easy, fantastic place to lay these eggs on the sides of roads too. Lay their eggs, and they will wander, make their way back to their home territories, which is actually where the young ones will also try to get to. So if you ever come across a nest when you're digging or anything like that, it's always important to be very careful and to give us a call, but not be too concerned because the parents are not there protecting them the way that you imagine, like an alligator would be or something like that. So if you come across them, they do not make great pets. So please don't pick them up and move them around from location to location. So it's always best to leave them in the wild in their natural environment. So back to what we have as far as hit by cars, our number one reasoning for people bringing them in. And we had quite a few this year that looked like they were not going to make it, but we were able to bandage them up and release them all this year. So again, leave them as you see them, even if they're small, and always be aware of them on the road all summer long, because even if it is late summer, they will still continue to lay their eggs. Those eggs may not hatch this year, but will actually overwinter underground and hatch in the early spring. The next species I'm going to be talking about is our red fox. This year we admitted a total of 24 red fox, adults and immatures. We had a total of 22 immature red fox, and 19 of those were able to be released back to the wild. So as I mentioned before, this is where your donation dollars go. We did admit from 16 counties this year. some of which were not where we usually admit from. We did have to kind of expand where we were taking or admitting these young fox from because we had a lot of our fellow rehabilitators' facilities shut down or closed temporarily, or were limiting what they were admitting for this time of the year because of the COVID virus that's going on. So we did end up admitting a lot more from a variety of different places. Another interesting thing with this year's group of admits is that many of them were actually litters that were being admitted instead of individual ones. So we would get in a litter of 4 or 3 at a time, which is kind of unusual to have all of them admitted at the same time. And we had a great group of people that were finding them. So this year, because like I said, we had a total of 24 admitted. We did have a bunch of young ones admitted that we actually had to bottle feed. I believe 2 of them, they were that young. They were under 4 weeks old. And here is a little bit of what they this doesn't have the costs involved in it, but if you can imagine, before, like I mentioned, the great horns will actually eat 12 mice. You can imagine what a red fox will eat, being much larger and having those different instincts, and the things that they need is also a much larger prey, which has a much higher dollar amount to it. But this year it was just astronomical, the numbers that we received of a lot of different species that we wouldn't normally see that number of. And again, that's not only because the facilities had been closed temporarily for a variety of reasons, but also because people were home and they were out and able to see what is actually going on in their backyard, which is always important because that really lets us know what really is going on out in the wild. The last species I'm going to be talking about today, as far as patient-wise, is our screech owls. If you are familiar with our Facebook page or are a member of Pine View, you will already know this story, but we did end up admitting 7 screech owls at one time. We ended up with a total of 14 throughout the year, and we had 11 immature screech owls this year. The reason that we had so many in one sitting was because there was a tree that was actually cut down, and when it was cut down, they started to log it into smaller portions, and as they did that, they accidentally hit the mother screech owl, and that's where they were able to find the 6 young that were still in that nest, inside of the tree cavity. So we ended up with those 6, and fortunately we were able to release all 11 of those screech owls. It is quite rare to have a full 6 of those young survive. They were all different sizes, and it was kind of funny as I was pulling them out. They all seemed to get smaller and smaller as I got further into the tree. So we were able to successfully release all of them. And again, if you follow us on Facebook or are a member, you probably saw the short video that I had of feeding them. It was quite an experience having all of those young mouths calling out for food and being able to be a part of that experience, and seeing them all being able to be released was a very high point in my year this year.